All right, so today we're going to look at a way to maybe completely change how you think about getting stronger and um, building a more muscular body and doing it really, really efficiently.
Right.
We're talking, forget those endless gym hours
Yep.
and, all that confusing advice that's out there. We've got a single source today to really deep dive into.
All right.
It's called Train Smart
Okay.
by Pete Sisco.
Cool.
And it's an ebook where he lays out what he says are revolutionary and proven techniques for transforming your physique.
Sounds good.
So, our deep dive today has one core mission for you.
Okay.
It's to take Sisco's work and extract the absolute essentials.
Yeah.
So you can understand how to maximize your fitness and muscle growth
Right.
without all that extra complexity.
Without all the fluff.
Without the fluff, exactly.
Yeah.
We're talking about getting results without drugs,
Yep.
without tons of supplements, and without living at the gym.
Yeah, living at the gym.
Yeah, we're after those core principles that really matter.
Exactly, the core stuff.
Now, if you're already familiar with Pete Sisco,
Okay.
his ideas,
Yeah.
you'll still want to pay attention, though,
Right.
because this ebook has new stuff.
Okay.
Like insights that he didn't put in his earlier books.
Fresh material.
Fresh material, yeah. And it's actually highlighted in the ebook itself.
Oh, wow.
One of the first things that grabs you is that Sisco really speaks to those of you, the listeners, who, have an inquiring mind. You want to know why, the why behind the training.
Yeah.
And you're not afraid to question how things are usually done to find out what really works.
Exactly. You want those, like, aha moments?
You want those aha moments. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So he's speaking directly to the listener who wants knowledge that's quick to understand, but also really, really thoroughly considered. And that's what we try to do here, too. Not just tell you, okay, do this, do that.
Right, yeah, no, just orders.
No, just orders, right.
Yeah.
But to help you understand the logic behind it.
Exactly, yeah, the why behind the what.
Why behind the what.
Yeah.
And the ebook format itself, that was a choice that Sisco made.
Okay.
And it benefits you directly.
Right.
He talks about freedom of content.
Okay.
Like being able to include links to things, have special pages, even have tools embedded.
Oh, wow.
Like a power factor calculator,
Okay.
which we'll get to later.
Cool.
But he also, emphasizes the freedom of style. And, this is where he can be really direct,
Right.
really plain spoken. For example, when he talks about drug use in professional bodybuilding, he doesn't pull any punches.
He's pretty straightforward.
He's very straightforward, yeah. What's kind of crazy is how direct he is.
Yeah.
He says it's not just steroids. He says that the top bodybuilders, they use like a whole bunch of different prescription drugs
Wow.
at crazy high levels.
Yeah.
Stuff meant for like diabetes and even cancer.
Seriously.
Seriously.
Oh, wow, that's pretty intense.
Yeah, and he's very clear about the health risks, especially long term.
Yeah.
He even suggests that some of these famous guys might be in for a pretty rough time, later on.
Oh, wow.
So, and this unfiltered perspective is really good for you.
Okay.
It means you're getting, info straight up.
Right.
No sugarcoating.
Or fluff.
No fluff, exactly.
Yeah.
Without those constraints that you might find in like magazines and stuff.
Yeah, like more mainstream publications.
Mainstream publications, exactly.
Okay.
And he also talks about being free from templates, not having to fill a certain number of pages. So he can just be really concise, get straight to the point.
Yeah, I like that.
Which is what we're aiming for today.
Exactly, efficiency.
Efficiency, yeah. It's like, think of Einstein.
Okay.
He didn't need 100 pages to explain IMCIRO. So,
Yes.
so Sisco is aiming for that kind of impact.
That makes sense.
In a concise way.
Yeah, I like that.
He also mentions, marketing freedom and global reach.
Okay.
Which an ebook has.
Yeah.
It can reach you wherever you are instantly.
Exactly. No waiting for shipping or anything.
No waiting for shipping, exactly.
Wow.
Okay, so let's get into it.
Right.
Cisco starts off talking about high-intensity training, or HIT.
Okay.
I'm sure you've heard this term. But what's the real no BS breakdown of what it actually means for building muscle?
Okay, so the thing is, HIT, it's kind of a buzzword.
Yeah.
Everyone's using it.
Right.
But there isn't one single clear definition
Okay.
that everyone agrees on. But the one thing that you absolutely need for building muscle,
Okay.
Sisco says, is this
Yeah.
consistently challenging your muscles with heavy resistance
Okay.
or something that that simulates that kind of heavy resistance
Okay.
and that forces them to adapt and get stronger.
So you're basically creating a demand, right?
Exactly.
You're telling your muscles, hey,
Yep.
you need to get stronger.
You got to grow.
You got to grow.
Yeah, to handle it.
To handle this, yeah.
Yeah.
He also points out that, if you compare any weight training to doing nothing at all,
Right.
obviously that weight training, it's going to feel pretty intense.
Of course, yeah.
Especially at first.
Especially at first.
Right.
Yeah.
So that's why a lot of different programs can give you those initial gains.
Right.
Because anything
Yeah.
is a new stimulus if you haven't been doing anything.
Yeah. If you've been sedentary.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. But those initial results, they tend to hit a wall.
Yeah. They hit a plateau.
They hit a plateau.
Yeah.
Okay. So he then talks about, the subjective definition of intensity. Like giving it 100% effort in the moment.
Right. Yeah.
This was popularized by guys like Arthur Jones and Mike Menser.
Yeah, I've heard of them.
So what are the problems
Okay, so
with relying on just feeling?
yeah, feeling the intensity.
Yeah.
That's where things get tricky.
Okay.
Because think about it.
Yeah.
What feels like 100% effort one day might be totally different the next day.
Right.
Depends on how you slept,
Yeah.
your stress levels, if you're feeling a little sick.
Oh, yeah. Tons of factors.
Tons of factors.
Right.
So one day's max
Yeah.
could be way less than another day's.
Okay.
So it's not a really reliable way
Okay.
to make sure you're challenging your muscles consistently.
Right.
And this is important, knowing when you might be pushing too hard
Okay.
and risking overtraining.
So you could get injured.
Exactly. So for real progress,
Okay.
he says we need objective ways to measure intensity,
Okay.
not just how we feel.
So not just how we feel.
Right.
Okay. So if just pushing hard isn't enough, how do we actually measure intensity?
Okay, so that's where power factor training comes in.
Power factor training.
Yeah, this goes back to
Jim Perry?
when Sisco started working with John Little
Okay.
back in 1992.
Yeah.
Their goal was to find a way to measure what was actually happening in a workout,
So.
like the weight, the reps,
Yeah.
and the time.
Mm-hmm.
Sisco, being a math guy, wanted a formula
Okay.
to really quantify intensity.
Okay. So how did they come up with this formula?
Well, they started with physics, believe it or not.
Physics.
Yeah, they looked at work first,
All right.
which is force times distance. In this case, force is like the weight you're lifting.
Okay.
Then they considered power,
Okay.
which is work over time.
So how much work are you doing in a certain amount of time?
Yep.
Got it.
So they thought, okay, let's measure
Yeah.
how much weight, how far it moves, and how fast that should give us intensity.
But then they ended up taking out distance
I did, yeah.
for some pretty interesting reasons.
Yeah, for a couple of reasons.
Okay.
First, it was just a pain to measure accurately.
Like in the gym.
In the gym, yeah, every rep.
Right. Yeah.
Like how far are your muscles actually moving?
It's not practical.
Not practical.
Okay.
And then, even more importantly,
Okay.
the distance a weight travels,
Yeah.
like in a bench press,
Mm-hmm.
it's mostly determined by your body,
Okay.
like your arm length.
Yeah.
And that doesn't really change much,
In adults, especially.
especially in adults.
Right.
So distance is pretty much constant
Constant.
from
Yeah.
workout to workout.
Okay. And then there's also the part where
Yeah.
the distance isn't as important
Right.
as the weight itself.
Physiologically speaking.
Oh, yeah. Can you explain that a bit more?
Sure.
It seems kind of counterintuitive.
Yeah, it is, but it's about how our bodies actually react.
Mm-hmm.
Like in physics, lifting 100 pounds 1 foot
Okay.
is the same work as lifting 400 pounds 3 inches.
Same work. Yeah.
Same work, but your body feels it way different.
Yeah, that 400 pounds,
Yeah.
even just 3 inches.
Right.
That's a lot of stress.
Huge stress.
Right.
Way more than a lighter weight through a full range.
Okay.
And they admit, back in 92,
Yeah.
they didn't fully get the biology,
Right.
but their tests showed it was true
Okay.
over and over.
So they ditched the distance part.
Basically, yeah.
And what did they end up with for their intensity measure?
Okay, so they called it the power factor.
Power factor.
Yep.
Okay.
And it's pretty simple.
Okay.
Total weight lifted
Mm-hmm.
divided by the total time.
Total time.
Yeah, start to finish.
Okay.
So it's pounds per minute.
Pounds per minute.
It's not a perfect physics term, but it gave them a number.
To measure.
Yeah.
Okay, and then the goal is to
Increase that power factor
increase it. Yeah.
every workout.
Okay, so you're always pushing harder.
Exactly. More intensity equals more muscle growth.
More intensity, more muscle growth.
Yeah.
Makes sense. And this focus on measuring led to another cool discovery.
Oh, yeah. What's that?
The effectiveness of training
Okay.
in just a partial range of motion.
Partial range of motion. Okay.
Yeah, so how did that happen?
So they were training full range, measuring everything,
Yeah.
making good progress.
Okay.
But then they hit a wall.
They hit that plateau.
Yep, a plateau.
Okay.
And it was John Little who said,
Yeah.
hey, what if we just focus on the strongest part of the movement?
Okay.
Like just the top quarter of the
It's
range?
just the top quarter. Okay.
Yeah.
So what happened?
Well, first their power factor jumped up,
Okay.
which makes sense, right?
Because they were using more weight?
More weight, yeah, even over a shorter distance.
Okay.
But the big thing was
Yeah.
their strength and muscle just took off.
Seriously?
Yeah, they were lifting weights they couldn't even touch before,
Wow.
even with just these short movements.
Now, partial reps, those
Yeah.
weren't new, were they?
No, people had messed around with them before.
But it sounds like the combination
Yeah.
with this way of measuring intensity,
That was the key. They
Yeah.
could actually see
the results.
the results, yeah, in black and white.
Okay.
So they wrote books about it
Yeah.
back in the 90s,
Mm-hmm.
and they heard from tons of people
Yeah.
getting crazy gains,
Wow.
even with just this limited range, like 6 to 8 inches.
Okay.
And it doesn't stop there.
It doesn't stop.
No,
Okay.
they kept refining it
Okay.
based on what they saw.
Okay.
So some people were making progress
Yeah.
with those 6 to 8 inch partials,
Okay.
but then they'd plateau again.
They hit another wall.
Yeah, the other wall. So they tried increasing the weight even more
Okay.
and shortening the range even further,
Okay.
down to like 2 or 3 inches.
2 or 3 inches.
Yeah, just the absolute strongest part.
Wow.
And guess what?
They saw more gains.
More gains, yeah.
Okay.
It really made them wonder how much movement
Yeah.
you actually need
To grow?
to grow. Yeah.
Okay. So
Mhm.
this led to static contraction training, or SCT.
SCT, exact.
Tell us about that first study they did.
All right, so they had this group of guys,
Okay.
average age 38.4 years old.
Okay, so not young guys.
No, not young guys.
Okay.
And they were already doing power factor training.
Okay.
So they were already making good progress.
Right. So these weren't beginners.
No, not beginners.
Okay.
And they put them on a really minimal routine.
Okay.
Only about 2 workouts per week.
2 workouts a week. Okay.
And each workout was like 2 minutes of actual exercise.
2 minutes.
Yeah, just holding heavy weight
Okay.
in that strong range for 15 to 30 seconds
Wow, 2 minutes a workout.
for experienced lifters.
Yeah, that sounds crazy.
It does.
What kind of results did they see?
Well, the results were pretty amazing.
Okay.
After just 10 weeks,
10 weeks. Okay.
they gained an average of 9 pounds of muscle,
9 pounds of muscle. Okay.
lost almost 5 pounds of fat.
Okay.
Their biceps, chest, shoulders all got bigger.
Wow.
Static strength went up over 50%.
Okay.
Their 10 rep max went up 34%.
All right.
And even their 1 rep max went up 27%.
All that in 10 weeks.
Yeah, with less than an hour of total exercise.
That is amazing.
It is.
Okay, and they didn't stop there, did they?
No, they wanted to see if this strength would
Yeah.
actually help with other things.
Okay.
So they did another study,
All right.
this time with golfers.
Golfers.
Yeah, middle-aged, both men and women.
Okay.
They used even shorter holds,
Okay.
like 10 to 20 seconds,
All right.
and over 6 weeks.
6 weeks.
Yeah, with an average of about 5 workouts per person
5 workouts total.
total,
Okay.
and only about 10 minutes of total exercise time
10 minutes total.
Yeah.
Over 6 weeks.
over 6 weeks.
Okay.
The golfers got a 95% increase in strength
Wow.
across 13 different muscle groups.
That's huge.
Yeah, and they hit the ball further.
They did.
Yeah, their drives went further,
Okay.
and they even saw improvement in their short game
Wow.
and better stamina on the course.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Okay, so those studies, they
Mhm.
suggest that just a little bit of intense training,
Yeah.
with those static contractions,
Right.
can lead to big strength gains
Yeah,
and even benefits for
Mhm.
athletes.
for sure.
Okay, so that brings us to
Yeah.
alpha and beta strength.
Okay.
So what are these 2 types?
All right, so Sisco uses 2 examples
Okay.
to illustrate this.
Okay.
2 world record holders in bench press.
All right.
Anthony Clark.
Okay.
He held a record for a single lift, something like 805 pounds.
805 pounds.
Yeah.
Wow.
This is what Sisco calls alpha strength.
Alpha strength.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's that momentary strength,
Yeah.
axe force in a short burst.
Okay.
Now, Jack Atherton,
Okay.
he held a record for lifting over 1,000,000 pounds.
1,000,000 pounds.
Yeah, in 12 hours.
In 12 hours.
So lots of reps with lighter weight.
Okay.
That's beta strength.
Beta strength.
Right. It's that sustained strength, muscular endurance.
Okay. So
Yeah.
it's the difference between that 1 rep max
Yep.
and being able to just keep going.
Keep going, yeah.
Okay.
For a long time.
And Sisco says these two strengths,
Yeah.
they might respond best
Mm-hmm.
to different training.
To different training, yeah.
For muscle growth.
So most people,
Yeah.
like 90% or more,
Okay.
they'll see awesome results
Mm-hmm.
from alpha strength training.
Okay.
Like power factor training
Okay.
and those SCT workouts, A and B.
Right.
But some people, especially endurance athletes,
Okay, like runners.
runners, cyclists, yeah,
Okay.
and maybe some martial artists,
Okay.
they might do better with beta strength workouts.
Okay.
Lower weight,
Mm-hmm.
longer time.
Okay, so
Yeah.
they came up with a way to measure beta strength too, right?
They did. They call it the power index.
Power index.
Yeah.
Okay.
It looks at the total weight squared,
Okay.
divided by time,
Okay.
and then all that divided by 1,000,000.
1,000,000.
Yeah, to make the number smaller.
Okay.
The key is that squaring,
Okay.
it puts more emphasis on the total work
Okay.
while still looking at time.
Okay, so can you give an example
Of
of
how-
how power factor and power index can show different progress?
Okay, so let's say you're doing leg presses.
Leg presses. Okay.
One workout, you do 58,000 pounds total in 2 minutes.
Okay.
Your power factor is 29,000.
29,000. Okay.
And your power index is about 1682.
1682. Okay.
Now, next workout,
Yeah.
you lift 87,000 pounds.
Okay, a lot more power.
A lot more, but it takes 3 minutes.
Okay.
Your power factor is still 29,000,
Okay.
but your power index is now 2523.
Okay.
So alpha strength stayed the same,
Okay.
but your beta strength improved.
Because you could do more work.
More work
Yeah.
over a longer time.
Over a longer time.
Got it.
So the takeaway here is by
Okay.
tracking both,
Mm-hmm.
you get a better understanding of your strength
Okay.
and whether your training is right for your goals.
Okay, so we've got to measure both.
Yeah.
Okay, and speaking of
Great.
recovery,
Yeah.
this is a big part
Yeah, it's huge.
that a lot of fitness programs miss.
Yeah, they gloss over it.
Yeah, they do.
Mm-hmm.
So why is it so important for muscle growth?
All right. So you got to understand,
Yeah.
muscle growth doesn't happen in the gym.
What?
No, the gym is just the trigger.
The trigger, okay.
It tells your body to adapt.
Okay.
But the real growth
Mm-hmm.
that happens when you recover.
So like when I'm sleeping.
Yeah, when you're resting, sleeping.
Yeah. Cisco calls this the stimulate, recover, grow cycle.
Stimulate, recover, grow.
Yeah.
Okay.
And he says there's a ton of info on working out,
Yeah.
but not much on how to recover properly.
Oh, that's true.
He thinks it's because
Yeah.
there's nothing to sell with doing nothing.
You can't sell rest.
Right. And he even tells this story
Okay.
about a guy named Stanley from Massachusetts.
Stanley from Massachusetts.
Yeah.
Okay.
He was hitting a plateau.
Okay.
Even though he was super consistent,
Okay.
he was showing signs of overtraining.
Okay, like what?
He was tired all the time,
Okay.
no motivation,
Yeah.
and no progress.
Okay.
So Cisco, he recognized that.
Yeah.
As Stanley got stronger,
Yeah.
his workouts were really taxing his body.
Okay.
Not just his muscles,
Hmm.
but his liver, kidneys, all that.
Oh, wow.
They don't adapt as fast as muscle.
Okay.
So he told Stanley,
Oh,
take 3 weeks off.
3 weeks off completely.
Completely. No
Yeah.
training.
Did Stanley like that?
No, he was pretty resistant.
Yeah. It's hard to stop
It is.
when you're trying to get stronger.
Especially when you're dedicated.
Right.
But he did it.
Okay.
And just 2 months later,
Yeah.
Stanley was stronger than ever.
Wow.
His strength went up everywhere.
Everywhere.
And his shrug strength, it went through the roof.
Seriously.
Yeah, he went from struggling with 400 pounds
Okay.
for 20 reps
Mm-hmm.
to doing 505 for 16
Wow.
easily.
Okay.
And then even 600 for 12 reps.
Wow.
And he was only working out every 9 days or so.
So he was taking more time off?
Yeah, more time off.
Like getting way stronger.
Way stronger.
That's pretty amazing.
Yeah.
So sometimes less is more.
Less is more, exactly.
Okay. So this leads to
maximum overload.
maximum overload.
Yeah.
Okay. So how do power factor training
Right.
and static contraction training
Yeah.
achieve this maximum overload?
All right. So both PFT and SCT,
Okay.
they're designed to overload those muscle fibers
Okay.
as much as possible
Mm-hmm.
in a short amount of time.
Okay.
And they do this
Yeah.
by using those strong range partials,
The short movements.
the short movements. Yeah.
Okay.
Because you're focusing on where you're strongest.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
You can handle way more weight
Okay.
than you could with full range.
So it's not just
God.
doing partials randomly, though, right?
No, not at all.
Okay.
You need a strategy,
Okay.
and you got to balance that overload with recovery.
Balance it, yeah.
Yeah, that's where the measuring comes in.
That measuring is key.
Absolutely key.
Okay.
Sisco has this chart in the book.